and also a former Sky journalist, which I also think is important to
Indeed,
note.
it was many years ago.
Many years ago, but there's a great common interest there. So Lara's book, if you guys don't know, is called Hacking Humanity: How Technology Can Save Your Health and Your Life. It came out in July this year.
Yeah, that's right.
And has been to great critical acclaim and flown off the shelves. And just give us a quick snapshot for those that don't know about the premise of the book, why you set out to write it.
Yeah, absolutely. The future of health, I believe, is set to be transformed, driven by AI, not alone, of course, but alongside cutting-edge science and doctors. Yes, I do not believe that the real-life medics are going anywhere. But the reason I wrote it, well, after 2 decades covering some of the greatest innovation on Earth, and I've travelled the world, I've been to space agencies, tasted future food, met countless robots, even been sort of turned into one in a Curry's warehouse. I could lift some very heavy boxes. But I believe this story of future health is the most important human story there is. Technology really changes the way that we behave. It really shifts society, and we need to acknowledge that, recognise it, and when it comes to our health, there is just nothing more important. And just as I was at the point of covering all this amazing health tech stuff, we had the explosion of AI, which I'd been talking about for many years before anybody was interested. And suddenly I became cool. People wanted to talk about AI, yet all anyone wanted to talk about in every mainstream interview I did was fear. No matter how amazing the story could have been on that day, the first question was always about fear. And I wanted to write something on the positive side, why we built this thing.
And longevity is part of that, and we'll perhaps come to that in a moment. Don't worry, we will, Jim. Promise. But one of the things that makes you so passionate about the way tech and AI can help health is actually to make all of our outcomes a bit more equal, because it's rather unequal at the moment, the access to the best healthcare and things like that we all experience.
Yes, well, as we've heard already today, there is a huge socioeconomic issue in expected health span and lifespan. But technology could, done badly, further enhance that gap. So we really need to make sure it's used sensibly. And this is one of the reasons that we really need to have this conversation, because AI does allow us the power to democratise education, to democratise healthcare, but we need to make sure that it's done right. In England right now, a high-income country with a national health service, women are spending a quarter of their lives in what is considered poor health. For men, that's 20%. We have a real issue here on needing to close this gap on health span and lifespan. And I know that here today I'm preaching to the converted. So often I talk to people and they are shocked by these stats. And they get carried away with the idea of living to 150. That's not what this is about. And I had a great conversation with Andrew and with Jim when I was writing this book. I've spoken to so many people who are doing incredible things. I am merely the messenger of people's great work. But we need to close this gap on health span and lifespan. We shouldn't be suffering for years, for decades. We can do something about it.
This is sort of going off on a little bit of a tangent, but obviously you're talking about all the people within the tech space there that have great intentions. You've covered tech broadly for a long time. I mean, is that representative of most people involved in tech? Because there's obviously lots of other areas where you might argue that it's bad for children's health, or it could be bad for adults' health in a certain way. Do you think, in fact, the disproportionate number of senior participants are in it for the right reasons?
Well, I think it's difficult to talk about technology or AI as one thing, because obviously it incorporates a huge number of different things. Even if you just talk about AI within healthcare, well, it can be an extra pair of eyes on a scan trying to spot the tumours that no human could. It could be a scribe system allowing a doctor to have the more human one-to-one experience whilst it takes notes. Or it could be analysing micro-movements in facial patterns and gaze patterns to be able to quantify depression in a way that no human could. So there's lots of ways that AI and technology are being used very positively, and people have gone out with great intentions to build them. It's not to say that these things aren't without risk. And often the risks and concerns that people feel the most are not even the ones that they should be. And when everyone was getting panicky about AI, there were often articles in a newspaper that had a picture of a humanoid robot next to a story about someone cheating in an exam, and people seemed to think this would end the world. How any of those three things would sit together, I have absolutely no idea. There are great risks on bias, disinformation, cyber war. There are real risks that exist. But there's also incredible promise. And we mustn't forget that just because we're trying so hard to see the negative side.
Which is the area that you're most encouraged about, or one of the one or two areas where you think there is such potential and actual change taking place in healthcare because of tech?
Cancer. I think there are so many variables that the ability for AI to be able to pull in data on genetics, lifestyle, disease occurrence, and so many other factors to understand who is at risk of what when, so we can screen better and find earlier. I know we touched on this earlier today, and this is where a lot of the power lies, is in prediction, so that we can either prevent or diagnose earlier, and we can treat in more personalised ways. And when it comes to cancer, as many oncologists said to me, killing cancer isn't hard. Killing cancer in a way that's tolerable to the patient is the difficult bit. So once we can create more personalised treatments, understand how somebody's own genetics, how their microbiome, how so much about them as an individual is going to interact with that drug, we can attack tumours more aggressively and hurt the patient less. So one oncologist said to me, he treats brain tumours, and he ended the interview that we did, this interview I did for the book, by saying that he looks forward to the day where he tells somebody that they've got a brain tumour and they say, phew, thank goodness for that. I thought you were going to tell me I had Alzheimer's. There is, of course, a lot happening in the dementia space as well.
No, I mean, it's a very telling quote that I completely agree. What about, you said dementia, of course, but ageing more broadly? Clearly, if we do live longer lives, that's a great thing. There are challenges with it. Can tech help on those areas? Is it helping in those areas?
Yes. So in many of the ways that we look at being able to predict disease and potentially prevent it, something like, let's take dementia. The idea that all of the scientists that I spoke to had was that we don't have anything to treat dementia right now, and we're not expecting a cure for it to be around the corner, but we are expecting better drugs to prevent its development. So if we reach a point where we understand the early onset of dementia, this could be through sleep patterns, which change 20 to 30 years before onset of symptomatic disease. So potentially, our wearables could even recognise that. Then we would be able to, with better drugs and better lifestyle prescribing, and this is through using certain wearables to be able to even assess the impact those changes have on you, be able to push back symptomatic disease. So with some diseases, the idea will be to push them back beyond lifespan, therefore increasing health span and being able to live the healthy years of our lives for longer. Look, our knees are still going to get weaker. We're still going to get more forgetful. We're still going to have the day-to-day issues of aging. Yes, we can try and push them back a lot, but we want to do everything we can to be able to look at this pattern, because AI can see things in patterns that no human has ever been able to. So we're in a place like never before to understand what is happening to our own bodies. So if we can find ways to try and push back that decline for as long as possible, it's not magic and it's not going to happen overnight. We're not going to be able to solve everything, but we can make things better to live more of our lives in better health.
And I guess if many people snapshotted the government here and the NHS in particular, you wouldn't immediately think tech savvy is the first thing that came to mind. But actually, is that an opportunity? And if there are a lot more efficiencies to find, and do you have confidence that we can harness the opportunities tech provides us?
Well, technologically we certainly can. Whether it comes into the NHS is another story. As part of the 10-year plan, they're looking at prescribing wearables for those coming out of hospital after acute treatment, for prevention, for those with chronic illnesses. We're also seeing a lot of hugely successful AI trials. The problem is they're not always getting rolled out. It's impossible to roll out every successful trial. And people often refer to this as pilotitis, because the possibility in terms of technology and AI is absolutely huge. And here in the UK, with a single payer system, you would hope that we'd be able to embrace it. And something that's been mentioned to me by a few people, and this actually didn't come up in the conversation so far, but no doubt will at some point, is the idea that, yes, maybe we will be able to come up with a better way to deal with healthcare as opposed to sick care, as many describe the NHS, but maybe it's not the NHS. Maybe it's a separate entity. And whilst we consider the NHS at one, everyone knows it's not really. We've got separate trusts, we've got separate pots of money for prevention and for treatment. So it's still not simple to be able to enforce things just because we're in Britain, where it might seem like it's a clearer one system.
Very annoyingly, we are out of time, as I can see. I think we've already gone over by a couple of minutes, but it's been a real pleasure speaking with you. And Lara's book is out and strongly recommended because we didn't have enough time. Hacking Humanity: How Technology Can Save Your Health and Life is out now for those that want it. Lara, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.